Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to session number 4 of the study group. So with us today, again, we have James and Stefan. Um, Today we are going over upgrades in the Aria suite, I believe.
Yep.
And yeah, if you've missed the other sessions, just feel free to go back and check out the YouTube channel. And without further ado, we go ahead and pass it over.
Cool. Thanks for that, Frankie. Hello, everyone. So as mentioned, what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the upgrades and updates. This is patching and everything like that to keep the environment up to date. And then I'll hand over and Stefan will run through some ARIA related bits and pieces. So again, it's not going to be death by PowerPoint. This is just I thought it'd be an easier way of visualizing some of the stuff we're going to talk through. So we're going to talk through the lifecycle management of a VCF environment. So when we talk about the lifecycle management, we're talking about the vSphere, vSAN, and NSX primarily for this bit. So everyone will have gone through an upgrade potentially in the past where you have to sit there for ages going through the compatibility matrix, making sure that the products are compatible and everything like that, which is one of the great things about the VCF product is that VMware do that all for you. So all of the bundles, the versions they release are guaranteed to work together. They've done all the integration testing and everything like that. So you can download a bundle, let it go away and do its update. Now, obviously, if you've got other bits plugged into the environment, if you're using live recovery or something like that, maybe HCX, you still might have to check on those. But what we're talking about, the main part here is just the lifecycle management of the VCF environment. So when it comes to the actual bundles, like I say, instead of going and finding them and downloading them and stuff like that. The SDDC Manager has a built-in function for bundle management. So what this allows you to do is to enter a set of credentials that will connect to the Broadcom support portal that everyone probably knows and loves by now. And then what it will do is it will allow you to download bundles directly to the SDDC Manager. Now, these bundles come in two different versions. An update bundle, which you use to actually update the VCF environment, and an install bundle. So once you've updated your environment, say you've updated Virtual Center, so it's gone from 8.3 you 8.3 8 update 3 E to F. What you'd have to do is make sure that you bring down the install bundle as well, because then what will happen is next time you deploy a workload domain, it'll automatically be at that latest version. So a couple of things on this is that it does require credentials, and you have to add those in. Those credentials have to have the right permissions on the Broadcom support portal to make sure that you can bring down the software. If you are doing a patch window, maintenance window, whatever you want to call it, please download the bundles well in advance. It's non-impacting. All of these bundles come down and are stored on the SDDC Manager, but the SDDC Manager download function isn't the fastest. So if you have a maintenance window, you don't want to be starting the download at the start of that maintenance window. You want to make sure that you do it well in advance to make sure all the bundles are there and ready to use. So that's just a bit of advice on that. Um, so that's one way of doing it, but obviously that requires you to have direct internet connectivity, which a lot of customers can't, whether if they're like dark sites or whether they're the security team just doesn't want direct connectivity. So your SDDC manager might be on a network that doesn't have that connectivity. So the other ways you can do this is you can do the offline bundle transfer utility. So what this does is this is a tool that takes a look at your SDDC manager, downloads a manifest file. You can then connect a machine somewhere else to the internet using that file, and that file will then show you the available downloads for that version. So what that's doing is filtering out so that you don't see a list of 100 odd patches. You know the patches that are applicable to the machine, to your SDDC environment. You're then able to download those bundles, and then you can manually transfer them over to the SDDC manager. So that's great for like air gap networks and things like that. And it allows you to control a bit more the bundles that are available. If you do the online depot, it will show you everything, and you can just click the button and download it. So you're not limited on, you might have a strict change control that says you can only do certain versions and things like that. The online depot will just download what's ever available, or at least with the offline bundle, you get a bit more control over it. And that's great if you maybe got one or two or a couple of SDDC environments. But if you've got a few, then in 5.2, what VMware have released is the ability to do an offline depot. So what this is you create your own internal web server. You use the offline bundle transfer utility to bring the files down, and then you can host those files in an offline depot. You can configure your SDDC manager to talk to that depot, so it would only then see the bundles that you've authorized. And this, like I say, this works great if you are looking to do a bit of change control, and if you can't connect directly to the internet as well. Plus, it's one download, and then you're streaming across your local network rather than having all the SDDC managers potentially pulling down the files themselves. If we have a quick look. So we spoke about this the other day, that you can set up proxies if you need to. And then in the depot settings, you've got the VMware depot, which is you can go in there, you can put your username and password in there, click on authenticate, that will go off to the Broadcom support portal. As long as everything's okay, you'll get a nice tick in the box, and then it will use those credentials to download. And then in 5.2 and above, you've now got the ability to configure the offline depot from the UI. Before, you could potentially set it up, but it all had to be command line driven, whereas now it's an option inside the UI. That's just showing about the offline depot, and that just allows you to host the patches. So in 5.2, the way patching used to work, if you're going back to the early days of VCF, is you used to get the, say, 4.1 bundle, and that would potentially be the SDDC manager, Virtual Center, NSX, and ESXi, and that would be a bundle. You'd download all the patches, and your maintenance window would be you would go through and patch all of those. Now, that could be quite time consuming, require quite long windows, especially if you've got a large ESXi estate and things like that. So what they've done over time is made this a lot better. And now when you talk about a potential upgrade, you can do the upgrade in pieces. So once you're up to 5.2, it allows you to do things like patch the SDDC Manager individually. So you can patch the SDDC Manager to get latest functionality, but you don't have to do the rest of the stack below it. Whereas before it was a bundle that you had to do all of it together to get that functionality. So they've decoupled all of that so that you can now plan and upgrade in different windows maybe, and it gives you that granularity that you don't have to upgrade your entire VCF environment just to get a new feature inside VCF. And the other thing that rigid uh, system used to do is make it very difficult for patching. So if, say, a ESXi critical hotfix came out back in the day, you'd have to wait for the SDDC manager to update so that it knew about the bundle to then be able to deploy the bundle. So it could be you could have to wait a extended period of time to get that security patch and have to do, a full VCF upgrade just to get it. Whereas now, um, I can't remember what version they bought it in, but you have the ability to do out of band patching, and it's now all built into the product as well, where you can actually apply the patches as they come out through the SDDC Manager, and not have to use the offline tools or anything like that.
It was introduced in 5.2 specifically, James. I was trying to double check that in the background.
Cool. And what else does the SDDC Manager and VCF give you above, because you could go in and, like I said, apart from the compatibility stuff and things like that, you could go in and upgrade your NSX Manager, your Virtual Center, and your ESXi manually. That in non-VCF environments, that's still fine. But what VCF gives you is pre-checks galore. It literally gives you, as you can see on the screen, it gives you the different steps that it's going to take. So you don't have to work that out. It gives you pre-checks, everything from passwords to certificates to error checking, making sure there's no errors in the environment. It does, I can't even, I'm not sure how many checks each of them does, but we're talking, multiples, which you would have to do manually yourself. And the great thing about the pre-checks is they're non-impacting. So you can run all of this in advance of your change window and make sure that the environment is working. So when you go into that change window to do the patching, you've got the confidence that as much as you can, that it should hopefully work first time as well. So in 5.2, like I say, you could do async patching. So when a new patch came out, you could run an async tool, which was via the CLI. What that would do would allow you to upgrade to the new version whilst keeping everything working in the SDDC Manager. We've mentioned before, if you do things that you're not supposed to, like maybe patch NSX outside of the SDDC Manager, that breaks a lot of things because the SDDC Manager knows what version it should be and everything like that. So the async tool would allow you to do that patching in a fully supported way. But what they've done in 5.2 is actually bring it into the UI. So where they've decoupled the requirement to do the whole BOM upgrade, you can now see, hopefully on the screen, that when it comes to patching, you can go in and individually choose versions. So you can mix and match. You don't necessarily have to have that rigid, this is the VCF BOM, you must be at that version. This gives you the ability to pick and choose the components so that, you might have maybe, say, backup software that might not have released a version that fully supports the version you're going to upgrade to. So you might want to leave that a little bit longer. And this then gives you the ability to have options on what versions of the products that you are actually patching to. But again, all of it is within the compatibility matrix. So this won't allow you to pick a combination that isn't supported. So again, you've got those guardrails around you that you can pick and choose the versions, knowing that you will still be in a fully supported endpoint once you get there. That was patching, and then obviously the upgrade is the complex one with the SDDC managers and stuff like that, and you now have the ability to look at what it would look like going from a different versions. It tells you, on the screen, it's showing you that you're at 5.1 at the moment. It tells you which versions are available, what components it could update them to, and things like that. So it gives you a single view to be able to start planning on updating your environment, and it makes it easier. It makes, you could use this information to pass into your change teams to understand the impact of the work you're doing, and things like that as well. But the great thing is it also tells you, it's got a link to the release notes, but it's telling you, what new features are in there, what you can expect from it as well. So you could, quite easily add that information to any system that you're maybe doing. When it comes down to the actual ESXi upgrades, depending on how big your environment is, you could have multiples of workload domains, you could have multiples of clusters inside a workload domain. So, you could go from a standard consolidated, maybe with just the single management cluster, all the way up to 24 workload domains if you're using isolated, and each of those can have multiples of clusters. So the environment could be fairly small or quite significant. So what you are able to do is you are able to apply the ESXi patches in two different ways. So you can do them in parallel, where you can choose the clusters. So you don't get the option to choose the hosts. So you couldn't go to cluster one and say patch host 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that order. But what you can do is you've got the ability to go in and say, I want to patch cluster 1 in workload domain 3 at the same time I'm patching cluster 3 in workload domain 1. So you can have multiples of patch jobs running, or you could literally run them sequentially. Maybe you might want to start with like a dev. Maybe you've got workload domain that you treat as test and dev or something like that. So you might want to patch that workload domain, make sure everything's okay before rolling on to the other ones. So you have that ability to do either parallel, which will make the task finish hopefully a lot sooner, or you can do it sequentially, where you still keep that control. And obviously, if something goes wrong, you're then only having to fix maybe one cluster, whereas if you're doing it in parallel and something did go wrong, you might have multiples of clusters that got affected. So it gives you that level of granularity that allows you to size your maintenance window to what suits you. And again, inside the UI, we've just seen the depot settings. Under release versions is that ability to look through and see what's included in the bill of materials. Bundle management would show you what's available, so you can schedule a download or just click download now. At the moment, the SDDC Manager doesn't have the ability to say schedule, say check on a Friday and download all available patches. It doesn't have that function at the moment. So you can schedule a download to go in the future, but you can't, it doesn't go off and check and stuff like that.
I'm going to read this question now. Do you have to have already downloaded that version, or does it show up automatically in the drop down here and then allows you to download it later or schedule the download?
So this one at the moment is connected to the Broadcom portal, and it will show you all of the available bundles from your version. So it won't show you the older stuff that's non-applicable. It will show you all of the bundles available, and then you can click on download. If you're using the offline one, you would download them manually, transfer them over, and then they would appear in here. Is that covering what was asked, do you think? Yep.
Just to carry on with the subject, I just tried to answer a question for Rodney. I was just double checking your question around can you select them in the patch planning wizard? Here we go. So I can select versions directly in here. I will, in the background, I will go and just double check. So I haven't downloaded anything. I will see whether this will actually download them automatically for me. Obviously, I actually keep this box just ticked, doesn't it? Okay. Because I need to do an upgrade in here anyway. So I'm just going to confirm that. If anyone wanted to see that live, that is how you can select the different patches. There we go. It's already decided what bundles we needed. What I will do is in the background of the call, I will double check as to whether it actually kicks off these downloads for us or whether it is going to wait for us, unless you know the answers to that, James.
I would put my hat on saying it will wait for you. I don't, unless something changed in 5.2 or 5.2.1, I don't know anything that automatically kicks off downloads. It's a manual task, hence why I mentioned earlier about not leaving it until you get to your change window, otherwise you might miss that one. Yeah.
So now actually seeing it there, I would say, Rodney, you will have to go and click download now, and hopefully that covers off your question earlier on that sort of topic. Thanks, James.
Cool. I'm pretty much done, so you can jump in.
Do you want to just share those slides again? And I'll just cover off the first few, and then we'll jump into some more demo looking stuff. Cheers, Rodney. Saw your message. Thank you. So yeah, so a little bit about the Aria suite really, and an application virtual networks is what we're going to have a little chat about next. So we've got a concept of the VMware Aria suite for Cloud Foundation. So hopefully people will recognize some of the names of the products in there. So the collective name is the Aria suite, and in there we've got Aria Operations, or what was called VROPS, Aria Operations for Logs, Network Insight. Sorry, not Network Insight, Log Insight, Aria Automation, vRealize Automation, and the Aria Lifecycle Suite Manager, again, was vRealize once upon a time. And we've also then got the Workspace ONE Access, or VIDM, as it was once called. This suite of products is partially deployable through SDDC Manager. So as part of your bring up and administration of VCF, you may want to deploy this. I'd suggest you probably would want to. And to start with, you would deploy the Aria Lifecycle Suite Manager via SDDC Manager. But before we get to that, there's a couple of prerequisites you have to do to be able to actually do that integrated deployment. One of them is that you need an NSX edge cluster, because you need to be able to deploy the AVN, or Application Virtual Network, which in short is a couple of NSX segments that then you would deploy the individual appliances to. So if we could drop onto the next slide, please, James. So what will happen is, once you have got your edge node stood up, we'll take a quick look at those in a second. You'll then go through a wizard, which I've got a little video to look at in a second, of actually configuring your application virtual networks. It's a wizard-driven process. It's not hugely complicated. It's fairly quick. But in essence, what you can see on screen is what it's deploying. So it's going to deploy 2 network segments onto your NSX edges. You'll have a region-specific segment and a cross-region section. Definitely worthwhile looking at those in a bit more detail from an exam perspective, understanding the differences between them, understanding the naming conventions for them, and their specific purposes is definitely worthwhile doing some additional research on from an administrative perspective. But in terms of what you would do with each one, and what product you would deploy into each, and what the difference is really, is a region-specific part of the AVN or segment is for parts of the Aria suite that you would deploy to a specific site or region that wouldn't necessarily be failing over. So an example of that would be Aria operations for logs. The instance for that is likely going to be a local instance to the data center or physical location, and you wouldn't necessarily be failing that over to a different recovery site. The cross-region segment is where you would then want to deploy things like Aria operations, automation, VIDM, and the Lifecycle suite manager itself. Because actually you may only want one deployment of those, and you're going to want them to travel to the R sites should you have an outage. So in this particular work we're doing, this is just the hands-on lab we've been talking about earlier. If we were to take a look in here, this has already got the edge clusters, sorry, the edge nodes for the cluster deployed, and they're all up and running. What we then also will see is that if I was to take a look at this little 3 dots here, I've lost an option here, which was to actually deploy an AVN. So if I show you what it looks like in an environment where it isn't deployed yet, I have an option here to add an AVN. If I try and click that, we'll start to get a wizard. It's half showing me that I can do this at the moment because I actually have a broken NSX Edge deployment. But I may actually better show you some of this wizard now rather than the video that I picked out. But we essentially start with this, and we get 2 different choices. You get overlay backed and VLAN backed. In terms of differences between these, I found this article, which I will just pop in the chat now, which kind of explains some of the differences between why you may want to use one or the other. So some of the main benefits of using an overlay backed NSX segment is that you don't actually need a VLAN. This is all done with overlays inside NSX. And one of the benefits of this is you don't have to have so many VLANs. So if you're in an environment where perhaps you're a little bit tight on VLANs, or you don't really want to have to manage additional VLANs, this can be certainly the way to go forward. But yeah, I think probably for the purposes of kind of the exam and to simplify it for this call, overlay backed means that you don't need a VLAN, and it does support dynamic routing. And if you were to use a traditional backed one, no real problem with that. You just need to have a backing VLAN to be able to do that. So I'm just going to select the overlay back for the second. I'll then have to select a cluster. This now won't work, and I'll go back to the video in a second because I don't actually have a working cluster, but we'd select an edge cluster and then we'd select the tier 1 gateway that exists. But again, if I pop this link in the chat, if anyone wants to go and take a look at it, what we can see here is we're back at the same screen. We are going to select eventually an overlay network, which is what we got there. We'll then select the different gateway, and we should have one selected in a minute. So there we select the management cluster, and we selected a tier 1 gateway. And then we move into the settings. So because we've selected the overlay backed, you'll see in the IP settings here, we've got no VLAN being presented or being asked for. We are just putting in a subnet, mask, gateway, an MTU, and also giving it a name for the NSX segment. I would certainly say keeping an eye on the naming of these different regions is important. Understanding the differences between them, definitely important. As I mentioned earlier, you'll see here now we've gone over to X region. This was region A, quite why we don't have the X and the A at the beginning of region on both. I don't know. Now I've just seen that. And then again, we've got the same details going in. And I think this will show us it in NSX. We'll get to the right bit. And there we go. And there you go. See on the topology diagram in NSX, we can, once that's actually deployed, you have two NSX segments, one as X region, one as region. And if I jump into the hands-on lab, I can show you that from the segments UI as well. So again, we've got region A, which is in there as an overlay. And if we scroll down, we've got X region as well. So that was those two. James, can we just drop back to the slides to see if there was any additional supporting ones in there that we can help back some of that up as well? Lovely, thank you. So that's actually a good slide in here, actually, to kind of go back to one of the things that I mentioned earlier about where you might want to put the different Aria products. So you can see on the region-specific segment there, we've got, there is a workspace one appliance in there as well, but the main one in there is that we've got an Aria ops for logs cluster and the collectors all in those region-specific. We've got the cross-region stuff in there, being Aria automation, Aria operations, lifecycle. But one of the reasons that we put these AVNs in is that then you can start to make use of load balancers. So if you are going to then deploy cluster-based Aria instances, you'll be able to then choose as part of those deployments to say, I would like to use a NSX load balancer from the NSX edge. Because a load balancer is a service that has to be on a gateway, so either the tier 0 or tier 1, those services have to exist on an NSX edge cluster. There's another slide there, which goes back with the link that I put in the chat, which kind of shows the choices and the differences between why you may or may not want to choose either or. So as you can see, there's a nice little recommended badge against overlay. One of the bits I haven't shown yet, actually, before we do get to that, is we've got this section over here, VMware Aria Suite. So once you have an AVN deployed, you then have an option which looks a little bit like this one. When you've got your edge cluster deployed and when you've got your AVNs deployed, this wonderful little box appears. And then you can actually then deploy Aria Lifecycle Suite Manager from within the SDDC UI. You'll just get a wizard pop up where you'll be able to put in the usual kind of appliance deployment details, and then away you go. I don't actually have anything for that right now, but what I can probably do over the next few days is put a video up on the Discord study group, showing that as a quick little video, if anyone is interested in seeing it. And everything's logged me out. Let's just log back in. Oh, and I've killed that. Let's try that again. There we go. So yeah, once it is deployed, this is the type of thing you're then left looking at. And we've got lifecycle access, workspace one access rather. And then here it tells you that if you want to deploy the other products, you do that via Aria Lifecycle Suite Manager. So let's have a quick look at that. I'm guessing everything's probably logged me out now, but there we go. So for anyone that hasn't seen this, this is the homepage of Aria Suite Lifecycle Manager. There's a few different bits and pieces in here. We've got a lot of identity stuff if you're going to configure all your RBAC, etc. But the two that are probably quite important from an administrative perspective is the locker and the lifecycle operations. So if we have a quick look at the locker first, in here you get a few different things in which you can do. So one of them is the certificate management. So in here you can generate the CSRs and certificates for the different products and then manage the lifecycle of the certificates from a single point. So rather than having to go to each of the individual Aria products, you can generate all your CSRs, generate all your certificates, all from within here. and it will push out the certificates to the endpoints, being your individual Aria appliances. So that's quite a useful administrative capability there. We can do licenses from within here as well. You can manage all the license side of it again for the suite of products. And we have the password management. So in here, you'll be able to build password objects. You can give it an alias name. It's just defaulting to something at the moment. You can provide a password. You can provide descriptions and usernames, and then you can store those. You can then use those for password rotation tasks and operations as part of your lifecycle. So talking of lifecycle, we'll hop over to here. You get an initial dashboard, which then starts to give you a nice little map. So if you've got data centers in multiple geographic locations, you'll start to see those all appear, which is quite a nice little graphic. And then we can look at our individual environment. So by default, you will get this global environment, which will stand up a VMware Identity Manager as a global service in there. And that is deployed into that environment by default. We've then deployed a second environment, which you can do through this create environment wizard here, which has then got the rest of the products deployed at the moment. And you can see in there we've got automation, ops for logs, and operations as well. So if we were to take a look at this particular environment, we then get a bit more information about what we've got going on. So this is the automation product at the moment. We'll get some product details that have been set up. You get various references to where it's tied into, and you get some details about the nodes. So this is just by the looks of a single instance. You can see that it's pushed into the cross-region AVN network segment. We've got some cluster names, and one of the references here is back to that password in the locker. So this just happens to be using the default or the object that happens to have the alias of default password. If you were kind of down the line, you're doing some password rotations and you've been 3 or 4 down the line, you'll probably have a different naming convention for these, and you'd start to see that in here. And you've got the application password, and you've also got the appliance root passwords as well. I think it might just be worth just showing you a few little bits around. If I click on these 3 dots here, just scroll up slightly, there's a bunch of other operational. Let me just try and get that to sit a little bit nicer on the screen. There we go. Various other administrative tasks that you can do in here. So again, we've talked about certificates. You can add licenses. You can delete it if you really needed to. You can do NTP updates. You can power on, power off. You can take snapshots. You can do patching. There's upgrade options if you've got the right bundles uploaded. There's quite a bit you can do from in here. And that'll be the same across all the different products that you've got deployed. If you wanted to deploy another product, you can go back into this environment screen, and on the 3 dots, you have the ability to do add products, and then you'll get a nice little UI. There we go, where you can then start to select other products for deployment. So it's already got some ticked and ready to go, but you can see here we've got Aria automation config, which was formerly SaltStack, and we can start to say this is a new install, or I want to import an existing. Can select the different versions. I want to have it Aria automation integrated, etc. You've also got things like Aria operations for networks down here as well, and an orchestrator. So you can deploy the whole fleet of products all from a single place and then manage the life cycle. This one's probably worth mentioning from an administrative perspective. So other than kind of a system upgrade, which is from like major or minor version upgrades, we have this concept of product support packs. So we seem to be bringing out newer versions or more newer versions of the individual Aria products than we do necessarily Lifecycle Manager. But that kind of means that sometimes the Aria Suite Lifecycle Manager maybe isn't aware of a newer version of a previous product. We use product support packs to basically inform Lifecycle Manager that there is a newer version of product available. So in this particular case, we are currently got the Lifecycle Manager version 8.18, but it is also running Product Support Pack 2. We're on a higher version of that, I think, as of today. But what it would allow you to do is, on Product Support Pack 2, it's allowed this version to know that 8.18 is available. I think it's not necessarily giving the best example here. This one might be the better example here, is 8.18.1, which came out after Aria Lifecycle 8.18. So that Product Support Pack has informed Lifecycle Manager that there is a newer version available. And if you were to put in, I think it's like PSP Pack or Product Support Pack 4 or 5, I think now, you would be able to do things like 8.18.3 for operations and operations for logs, etc. All right, how are we doing on time? Yeah, probably need to move on a little bit here. We'll do a quick little look at kind of navigational stuff. So some of the kind of things you'll be looking at in the exam is a lot around troubleshooting. So understanding how you might want to troubleshoot something is quite important. And there'll be all sorts of things, you know, for troubleshooting, and every troubleshoot is kind of differently. But let's take an example of, and this isn't necessarily part of the exam. I don't remember anything about this particularly on the exam, but I'm just trying to come up with a very easy example. Is I've probably got connectivity problems on a host, you know, and what you might then start to do as part of some of the different structures of the questions is, you know, what kind of tooling or what options are available for me to troubleshoot that. And that could be, do I want to look for any errors in or alerts in Aria operations? It might be, do I want to look at logs in Aria operations for logs? Or actually, do I want to just do the really basic things first, which is, should I be just pinging it? Is the host actually online? You know, we have to start somewhere with troubleshooting. So kind of understanding what troubleshooting opportunities are available for you is going to be important. So all of the stuff that we will probably know and love around vSphere is still all applicable. You know, we've still got, you know, we've still got to ping things. We've still got VM kernel adapters that we might want to check. But we've got all these additional things now that if you're just used to a traditional vSphere estate, you may not have been had access to in the past. So what we've now got in here is various bits and pieces. So this is Aria operations, and if I was to go into, I've got to remember my way around this now. Here we go, operations. We've got a couple of different tabs that are available. So one, we can kind of go into alerts and look at any active alerts that are in the estate. Quite a useful troubleshooting area to go and take a look. So in here, apparently we've got some ESXi Manager services that are failed, and we've got a number of services there. Apparently there's a NAT rule not configured in here. Might not be helping some routing somewhere. And I've got some disk space issues. So again, a useful way of troubleshooting various different things within your estate. We've then got some other useful things which may not necessarily be looking for just alerts, but you just want for informational purposes. So dashboarding is a really good one. There is a bunch of really good ones out of the box, specifically under like the VMware Cloud Foundation bundle. So in here, I could have, let's have a look at inventory, for instance. I've got a nice graphic now, which could go up in monitoring Teams, you know, space on, big, office monitors, something like that, or just available for anybody who's doing that kind of stuff. And you get various bits of data. We've got things like right sizing dashboards out of the box, which again can help you if you're looking to. It's not going to show me anything apparently though in this hands-on lab, but obviously everything is sized perfectly in this hands-on lab by the looks of it. But if you've got machines maybe that have got too much resource, and you could reclaim some because you've got issues with a bit of a resource constraint in your estate, this would be able to help you out. And there's various other ones in there. And then we've got reports. So you might have a team of individuals who may want to, let's use capacity as an example, as it is right on the screen there. You might want to be able to send a report around capacity for a specific environment or a data store cluster to a specific group of people, and you'd be able to set up various bits and pieces from here in terms of scheduling. So you could set up this to run on a schedule, let people have access to Aria operations to be able to view those reports, and they'd be able to get them and things like that. Or you could just go and ad hoc run them. I believe, if I remember correctly, I think you can actually schedule these to go off on email as well.
Yeah.
You can, yeah, I thought you could. Although I can't scroll very well in this really small hands-on lab screen. See if we can get through one of them. Yeah, so if you've got some publishing options configured in the settings, you can set up SMTP servers, for instance. And there's various other different reporting options which you might be able to take or make use of as kind of communication endpoints. Yeah, so that's kind of a very, very brief overview of it. But if you're looking at a troubleshooting perspective, being able to look at dashboards, alerts, reports, maybe the way to go to give you some options for looking at things. And then we've got operations for logs. So this is what you see when you get there. And for anyone that's not sure what this is effectively our syslogging tool. So in this particular environment, because we've deployed this via VCF, it's aware of all the VCF clusters, workload domains, hosts, all of those things. It's already aware of them. If you were to deploy additional workload domains, they would automatically end up in here. And there's no manual tasks involved in that. They would just be auto-loaded and collected. And we can see all sorts of information here. But if I was to head down into this Explore Logs option, effectively now I have a searchable dump of all log entries from all the different logs that have been ingested from all the different endpoints that are configured. So for instance, if I just wanted to deal with an NTP issue, I could just start to type NTP in here and go, okay, I want to see what errors I've got for NTP or log entries, let's say, not necessarily just errors. There could be informationals depending on your logging levels. What we've got, there's a status in here. I'm guessing I think I saw 200 somewhere. Can't quite read that. There's a lot of information on me, but trying to find a good one. I'm hoping to find a failed actually, but maybe I can't. But let's say we were just having a look at this particular log. One of the things you can then do is actually go, well, I don't know what log this is. Sorry, you do know what log this is from, rather, because you've got the information all here. But I may want to actually look at things either side of this event to help try and build a bigger picture and build a narrative to what's actually going on. And I've accidentally clicked the wrong thing because it's lagged. Let's try that again. Here we go. So one of the other options here is view event in context. So what that will then do is pop up a snap of that particular log that entry came from. And now this is showing me that log file, highlighting the entry that I've selected. And now I can start to have a look at what's happening before and after to help me with that troubleshooting experience without having to necessarily, if I want to now look at this on another host to compare, you've then got the ability to start filtering and searching for other hosts without having to necessarily log into all your different nodes and start looking at the log files in SSH sessions, for instance. So really useful tool. And again, quite a critical one for troubleshooting if you're trying to look at multiple logs. I'm just thinking about time. We've only got 5 minutes left. James, is there anything you wanted to add to what I've been going through there?
No, so definitely for the Aria stuff is that we've shared it a couple of times. The blueprint for the exam has a lot of information in there about where you could refine your investigation. So if you don't know about a product, it's good to know, as Stefan mentioned, what the products do, so that if you maybe got asked a question about, you would then know which one of the tools to go and look at, and then that would immediately discount a couple of options and things like that. So the majority of it is, because it's an administration exam, is about what you do, how you use it, rather than having the background of knowing how it's deployed and everything like that is great. I think for the exam, you'd be more looking at how you use the tools, in what order, and things like that. So all of this we're doing here is to give you an understanding of the VCF environment, how it is, to make those next steps easier for you to maybe go off and find additional information, maybe hone in on individual bits and pieces. So that it might seem that there's like a lot of stuff in the Aria products, which there is, but when you start looking at the blueprint, you can start narrowing down, areas that you can look into to help you out there.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Frank, I was going to say, I'll do the usual. I'll post all the links from today's Zoom chat into the file on the study group, and if anyone wants to pick those up after the event.
Excellent. Yeah, I thought the upgrades was gonna take longer.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? I could have literally talked about it for hours, but obviously we've got to share all of the information rather than me hogging the limelight. So we can happily go into it in more detail if people do want it. We've probably got, if it's okay with you, not speaking out of term, we've probably got one more session of content left around some networking bits and some bits to just tie up around maybe I don't know what we're calling it this week. Containers, Tanzu, something. I have no idea what we're calling it,
modern
but
apps.
that's the one. Steve, there you go. So yeah, we've probably got enough content for one more session, but if any people have got additional stuff they want to cover, if they want to go into more detail on stuff, then just drop us a message on the Discord stuff and we can certainly either do additional sessions or flesh out next week's session with those.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely echoing what James said, use the Discord channel. There's been some good conversations on there this past week. More you share, more people can answer stuff. Everybody can share the love then.
Excellent. All right, so next week, modern apps, Tanzu, IaaS, a little combo of that, and then we'll probably have a final session. I'll just put it on LinkedIn just so people can come in and just ask questions, and then that may not take the full hour. Hopefully it does. Right? Hopefully we have enough questions, and then yes, we'll be able to wrap it up. Right? If that's okay with you. Perfect.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Waldemar over there for helping out in the chat. Thank you, gents, and see y'all next week.
Cheers.
See you later. Cheers.